Hi, everyone. Welcome to the pre-application webinar for Libraries Transforming Communities, focus on small and rural libraries. In this session, we will be covering everything you need to be aware of in order to apply for one of the $3,000 grants for small and or rural libraries. Before we dig in, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Mary Davis Fournier, and I'm the Director of the Libraries Transforming Communities Project and Deputy Director of the American Library Association Public Programs Office. Throughout this session, I'll be taking you through the grant guidelines, providing you with tips on how to write a competitive application, and showing you how to submit your proposal using the Foundant application system. I also just want to make a quick note that the first portion of this presentation is pre-recorded. Following the presentation, there will be time for a live Q&A to answer any questions you may have. Libraries Transforming Communities, or LTC as we call it, Focus on Small and Rural Libraries is an initiative that seeks to provide community engagement resources and opportunities specific to the needs of library workers who serve small and rural communities. We are grateful to our partners at the Association for Small and Rural Libraries for their ongoing collaboration with this project. As part of this initiative, ALA will provide $3,000 grants to up to 650 libraries serving small and or rural communities to develop and lead community efforts, and we will provide library workers with facilitation skills via the Libraries Transforming Communities Facilitation Skills for Small and Rural Libraries e-course and facilitation guide. So even during this challenging time, and especially maybe during this time, libraries are serving their patrons in new and important ways through community engagement. For those of you who may be less familiar with the term community engagement, it is the process of working collaboratively with community members, be they library patrons, residents, faculty, students, or partner organizations, for the betterment of the community. So in this section, we'll talk about what you need to know before applying for one of these $3,000 grants. First thing, you'll need to check that you are eligible for this opportunity. The great news is that this grant is open to all types of libraries, including public, academic, community college, K through 12, tribal libraries, and special libraries. However, applicant libraries must serve small and or rural communities in the United States or a United States territory. So what is a small and or rural community? We could talk about that all day, but for the purposes of this grant, per the Institute of Museum and Library Services definition, a small community is one that has a populated area of 25,000 or less, and a rural community is one that is more than or equal to 5 miles from an urbanized area. An urbanized area means 25,000 people or more than 25,000 people. The other eligibility requirement that you must meet in order to qualify for this grant is that your institution must be a member of either the American Library Association or the Association for Small and Rural Libraries. If you have any questions about whether your library qualifies as a small or rural library or about your membership status with either ARSL or ALA, please email the Public Programs Office at publicprograms@ala.org, and we'll work with you to determine whether you qualify. So let's say your library is eligible. What exactly is it that your library will get? Well, if you are selected for funding, you will receive $3,000 to support expenses related to a community engagement project. These funds can be spent on a wide variety of things to support your work. The eligible expenses are very broad. We'll talk about them in more detail in a few minutes, but they range from anything from PPE to hotspots to staff time. You'll also receive professional development consisting of the LTC Facilitation Skills for Small and Rural Libraries Asynchronous e-course, and you'll also receive a suite of online resources developed to support community awareness of your library's efforts, including template press releases, social media messaging, digital promotional materials, and template letters that can be used to notify your local leaders or officials about the library's project. We will try to keep the burden of creation of any of these things as light as possible. And ALA project staff will also be available to help throughout your project. Finally, you'll get technical and project support from the ALA Public Programs Office through the grant term, such as access to online learning opportunities for you as a grantee that will be intended to assist you in promoting your conversation, completing grant reporting requirements, and participating in the evaluation. You'll also be connected with community of practice for you as a project director and your colleagues who may be also helping you do this work. So now that you know what your library will receive, let's talk about what you will be required to do. So the requirements are pretty straightforward. You need to complete a 6-part asynchronous e-course teaching facilitation skills. It's about a 4-hour commitment. You need to host at least one conversation with community members using the skills that you learned in the e-course. And then you need to share what you've learned in this process and from your community. I'm going to break this down just a little bit in more detail in the next couple of slides. So, in terms of the e-course, first, the person leading the grant project, the project director at your library, will need to participate in the facilitation skills for small libraries, small and rural libraries, asynchronous e-course. We estimate this course will take approximately 4 hours to complete, and this slide shows you the 6 modules and the topics they cover. Taking this course is not limited to you as a project director. Your colleagues can join you. It is an asynchronous course, so you can do this at your own pace. Once the project director completes the e-course, you'll need to host at least one conversation with community members, and it can be anything from using the conversation cafe model to talk to your community about a topic of interest, to hosting a one book, one community project, to facilitating a dialogue on a broader issue. Everything that you need to know about leading a community conversation, from what to do when planning a conversation, how to facilitate the discussion on the day of the event, and what should be done afterward to follow up with participants, is in this course. So after the conversation, you'll be asked to share out what you heard or learned, and you can do that in many different ways that I'll get into in one of the later slides. So these conversations, what in the world should they be about? Well, for your community conversation, we want you to cover any topic that is relevant to your community. This could include anything from public health concerns, what is going on with job seeking and unemployment in your community, e-learning, school closures, or even using a book or film as a way to springboard a discussion about an issue that your community is grappling with. We really want you to focus on facilitating a conversation and building these skills, and focus on a subject that's important to the community your library serves in a way that works best for them. So this could mean hosting an in-person conversation outside the library that maintains social distancing best practices, or it could mean leading a virtual conversation on Zoom. There are many possibilities. Following your conversation, you'll need to publicly report and share out information about the content or outcomes from the conversation. And you can do this also in a number of ways. You can write an article and submit it to a local newspaper or media outlet, or you could just post something about it to your library's social media. You can create a video and post it to your library's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or other social media. You could write and send a letter or an email to a regional leader or state legislator or another elected official about the conversation and what you learned from your community. You could create a library blog or podcast about the issues discussed, or add it to your existing one. during the conversation or even about the process itself for you. And you can also use PLA's Project Outcome Civic Community Engagement Platform, or ACRL's Project Outcome Events and Programs areas, to collect and share feedback from your participants about the conversation with your library leadership or trustees or board. And if Project Outcome and PLA and ACRL's Project Outcome seem like things you have no idea of or have not heard of, no worries. These are just great free platforms for gathering community feedback that allow libraries to have their own dashboard and to do some very easily manageable evaluation and impact feedback from community members. And we'll have lots more about that later in this grant opportunity. So let's talk about, once you have the grant, what you can spend the money on. With the wide range of ways that you can choose to implement a community conversation, we wanted to make sure that the eligible expenses are flexible enough to meet the needs of a variety of projects and community engagement work. So due to this, the grant funds can be used on anything to support your community engagement project. This may include, but is not limited to, programming materials such as markers, Post-its, paper, etc., staff time to work on this, books or audiobooks, ebooks, hotspots to lend out to your community members so that they can participate in the library's work, personal protective equipment, PPE, space rental, marketing materials, speaker fees, so much more. The grant funds may not be used to support indirect costs, specifically general library administrative expenses. That is the main restriction on use of these grant funds, indirect costs. Now that we've gone over all the requirements, let's dive into the actual proposal. For this, I'll be walking you through the various application components in Foundant, our grant platform. To access the application, click the Apply Online link that you see circled in the slide on the Grant Opportunity Information page. This will open the login page for Foundant in a new window. If you have previously used the Foundant system to apply for a grant through ALA's Public Programs Office, simply enter your email address and password and log in by pressing the blue button. Note that your login information for Foundant is not the same as your login information if you have an ALA membership. This is a separate system. If you have not used the Foundant system, click the gray Create New Account button to set up a profile. However, if you believe that someone else at your organization may already have created an account with Foundant to apply for a different grant opportunity, please click the link to verify with our grant administrator before setting up a new account. Since the majority of you may not already have an existing login, I'm going to spend the next 2 slides walking you through how to set up the login for the system. If you need to create an account, you'll be asked to provide organization information, user information, and executive director information, with an option to select if the user is the executive director or library director. Fill in the required fields and click the Next button to navigate through these sections. Once you get to the final section, create a password and then click Create Account. As soon as you do that, you'll receive an email verification to the email address you've just provided. Once you receive this email, click I have received the email to continue. After you have either set up your new account or logged straight in, you'll be directed to this screen. From here, you may click Apply to begin your application. That's the circled blue button on the screen. At this point, you can also access the guidelines. See the link on the screen with the arrow next to it? And remember, if at any point you want to grab those guidelines or check the FAQ for this grant opportunity, you can also find them on the project page at ala.org/LTC. So after you press the apply button, you will be in the application. And although I'm showing these sections to you in a series of screen capture slides, on the screen in the application, you will see that the application is a multi-section form that you're going to scroll down through to navigate. And the main sections in that form are project name, complete project director information, library information, narrative, upload materials, sign application, and then finally submit. The project guidelines walk you through this whole entire application in detail, but I'll also do a quick walkthrough here. Please fill out the requested fields with contact information for your library's project director. Note that this information will not be pre-populated from your user profile for the Foundant system. In this section, you'll also be asked to provide your congressional district. If you do not know this information off the top of your head, you can just click the link labeled United States House of Representatives, and the Find Your Representative website will be opened in a new window. You'll also be asked on this page how you heard about this opportunity. Please select all the options that apply. Next is the library section. Here you will use the drop-down menus to select your library type, the total population served, and your community type. In this section, you will also be asked to provide information about your ALA or ARSL membership. As a reminder, personal or institutional ALA or ARSL membership is a requirement for this grant. One or the other. You don't need to be a member of both. If you have questions about your membership status or where to find your membership number, please contact publicprograms@ala.org. If you're not currently a member and you would like to become one, see the FAQ section of the LTC Grant Opportunity website for links to join either organization. Next is the proposal narrative section. I'm going to spend a little time here. This is the heart of your application. So this is a section where you're going to explain what you're proposing. There are links provided to the grant guidelines and the Leading Conversations in Small and Rural Libraries facilitation guide. We strongly encourage you to read both of these before preparing your responses to the narrative section of this application. They will really help you structure a plan. You may want to prepare your answers in a Word document or another type of document and just paste those answers into the application when you're ready. The narrative questions are in 4 sections: community library information, topic or issue, goals, and plan. There's also a budget section, but we'll do that next. So under community and library information, this is your opportunity to really describe your library and the community it serves. Please include demographics, dynamics in the community, key issues or challenges that the community is facing and that the library is facing. In the conversation topic or issue section, please describe the topic or issue that your community engagement project will focus on. Why is it important for your library community to discuss this particular issue or topic? How did you get to this particular issue or topic? For example, did you talk with library patrons, reach out to other area organizations or partners, dig into some data about your community? There are many ways to explain this. Also, how will your library and or community benefit from having these discussions? What do you hope the benefit will be? What does the data or the feedback you've received show the opportunity is there? Next is conversation goals. So describe your library's goal or purpose for this project plan. What are you aiming to accomplish? For instance, are you hoping to enhance library resources based on community input? Do you want to explore a topic or build understanding of others' experiences? Do you want to generate ideas or explore options or make a decision? Do you want to discuss an issue and collaboratively determine some next steps in your community? There are many options. There are also in the guidelines, there are a number of example possibilities to get your ideas flowing. The next section is conversation planning. How do you envision your conversation taking place? For example, are you going to have a virtual book club discussion? Are you going to do a socially distanced conversation outside at the library using the National Issues Forum model? There are a number of different conversation models that also are linked to in the project guidelines if you're wanting to reference some of those, if any of them feel like they're a good fit. Here, think about whether you feel you're able to describe how you envision your conversation will take place, or if you are entirely new to this and planning to learn these skills through the required online course, talk about that here. Also talk about what kind of outreach or marketing you plan to do for this community engagement conversation. Talk here about how you're planning to share what you're doing with the community, either locally or at large. For example, are you going to try to write an article for the local newspaper, create a video about what was discussed for the library's social media? There are also lots more examples in the guidelines that you can look over and see if any of them feel like a good fit for this. So, budget. In the narrative section, it's the last section, you'll also be asked to provide detailed information about your proposed budget. So here, describe your plans for spending the $3,000 in grant funds. What will you use the funding to purchase or support? Please be as specific as you can be. For example, if you plan to use $1,000 on staff time to support the community engagement project by developing it, planning it, implementing it. If you want to spend $200 to purchase a Zoom business license so that you can host virtual conversations. The total amount, no matter what, of your proposed budget should add up to the $3,000 of the grant. Here, you can upload documents. Here you can upload letters of support. These are not required, but they are suggested. They can be from your members of your community. They can be from leaders and stakeholders in your community. They could be from partners that you work with as a library in your programming. You can also here upload any additional materials that might provide more information about your proposal, such as sample promotional materials. If you've already mapped out your discussion, you can upload draft discussion questions. All of these uploads are optional, but they might help to make your application more competitive amongst the pool of applicants. In the final section, you will need to provide contact information from a certifying official. This should be anyone with your library who is able to submit applications for funding on behalf of the institution. This individual may vary depending on the institution, but typically this is the library director. It can also be the same person listed as the project director or the person submitting the proposal, as long as they are able to submit applications for funding on behalf of their institution. You will also be asked in this area to certify that your organization is neither presently debarred, suspended, proposed for debarment, declared ineligible, nor voluntarily excluded from participation in this transaction by any federal department or agency. To check the status of your institution, click System for Award Management. See the arrow? Click there. This will open the sam.gov website in a new window where you can search for your institution and verify that your organization is not listed as ineligible. Once you've completed all information, you can click Submit Application. Once you submit, you can no longer edit your application. If you're not ready to submit yet, you can save application and will be able to access your draft when you log back into your account using the Edit Application link. So, not ready to submit? Hit Save. Ready to submit? Congratulations, hit Submit. To wrap us up here, I'd like to share some of the top tips that we've gathered as you work on your application to keep in mind for submitting a successful and competitive application. First, be sure to read the grant guidelines carefully. They contain so much pertinent information about the opportunity that it is critical to include to ensure the competitiveness of your application. Second, be sure to thoroughly answer all the questions in the application. Provide as much detail as you can within the 600 words for each of those narrative responses. Those details will help reviewers understand your library and the project you're planning. Say to yourself, what should reviewers know about my library and my community in order to understand my proposed community engagement project? Keep in mind also that if you get letters of support, that is an opportunity for community members to speak to this on your behalf as well. Number 3, whenever possible, provide numbers and examples, provide data to justify what you are saying in the narrative. For example, if you're describing the poverty level in your community, pull some census data to help support and specify what you are saying. Next, find community partners to work with on your project. This is not a requirement, but especially during these times, partnerships and effective partnerships can go a long way to helping you reach different members of your community and also to sharing the work that is involved with community engagement. Again, while optional, we really recommend those letters of support from community stakeholders that show their commitment. I can't plug that enough. It really helps show the peer reviewers the buy-in and interest in your community and the potential your community sees for this project. Then finally, if you have questions, first stop, check the FAQs that are on the project website at ala.org/LTC. But please do not hesitate to reach out as well to the ALA Public Programs Office. Our team at ALA, reachable at publicprograms@ala.org, is standing by to answer your questions and help you work out anything that you see as an obstacle to applying for this grant. We really, really want you to feel comfortable and to feel like this is a possibility for you. And our team is committed to responding by email and phone as soon as we possibly can to your questions and concerns. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening to this presentation, this walkthrough for this grant opportunity. We're going to switch over now to a live question and answer to answer any questions you may have in this moment during this webinar. Thank you all so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much. I want to thank everyone so much for making the time to attend today. I know this is a tremendously resource challenging time and for everyone, and especially for you and what you're trying to do. So thank you for being here. I'm I'm going to just mention a few more things to sort of put our Q&A section in context, and then my colleagues Samantha and Elena and I are going to do our very best to answer all of your questions. So I just wanted to show you this. This is a map of the grants that were distributed under this initiative in round one. In round one of this application period, we had 200 grants to give out. Right now, we have 450 $3,000 grants. So this is the distribution. I want to really shout out to some of these states that just pulled it together to get in before the holidays, many proposals. And I want to say to the states that may be on this webinar, but represented on this webinar, but weren't able to apply in the first round or thinking about it for this round, we are here to help you. For those of you who are in states that already have received grants, the list of those recipient libraries are also on our website, and those folks might be great people to just talk to and say, hey, what'd you do? How'd you do this? So I wanted to put that out there so you can see it as well. And then Samantha, if you can go to the next slide. We're going to keep this up just as the dates that sort of represent the cycle of this deadline, which is March 4th of this grant opportunity, so that you have this as a reference while we're talking through your questions. So let's go.
Great. So the first question from Allie is, how can we be sure our library is rural?
Right. So it really depends on your service population and or your community population size. And I'm saying both because there are some libraries that are situated in small communities but have a vast service population because they are in, say, a state like Wyoming. And we are, either one of those may be eligible, but as long as your community is under 25,000 people, you are considered a small community. And as long as you are within, how many miles? 20 miles of a community over 25,000, you are considered rural. So if you fall into any of those categories, you are eligible for this grant. Public, academic, tribal, school, any type of library. Special.
Great. The next question is from Jenna. So could you just talk over briefly the timeline for when our conversation has to take place and when our funds have to be spent down?
Yes. So your conversation can take place as you're looking at these deadlines anytime between May 1st and October 31st of May 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2021, anytime. We're assuming that you will take the e-course before you have this conversation. And for any of those of you who are like, community conversation, what is that? What do you really expect? You will learn much more about that from the e-course. If this is not something you've done before, it is absolutely acceptable and encouraged for you to say, I've never done this before. I have these issues I want to look at for the community. I have these ways I want to spend this money because based on community need, but I'm going to take this course and then I'll be able to really think about how I want to do this conversation and who needs to be in this conversation. It is absolutely fine to just say, this is a new area for me, and compelling, I have to say.
The next question is from Hillary. She's wondering if only the project directors can lead the conversations, or can other staff also be assigned to lead conversations?
Hey, Hillary, great question. No, if you have other staff, they absolutely can lead those conversations and they can help you lead it. But what we do ask is that the library staff who are leading conversations complete the e-course on facilitation skills. And if you receive this grant and you want to bring in your whole staff or people who are not necessarily listed in the grant, then you'll just reach out to us and we'll add them, their information, and they'll be able to log in. And they'll also be able to participate in the conversation with those who have received the grant and facilitated it. If you do intend to do that, include that in your narrative. Say, I want everybody doing this. That's great.
The next question is from Debbie. Could you give us some examples of the projects that were funded in the last round?
Right. Okay. And also, Samantha, I just realized I did not answer the question about timeline for spending funds. So I will answer Debbie's question, but just to answer that second part, Jenna. So you actually get, Samantha, remind me of the deadline for spending funds for this. Is it February?
Yeah, 2022, end of February.
Yes. Okay. So this is a funny thing. Your final report for this project is due December 31st, but we give you until February 2022 to spend all the money. The reason we do that is because many of you, we have heard many of you are operating on different starts to your fiscal year and have already budgeted in some ways, and we want to give you as much flexibility as possible. And our bottom line here is flexibility. You may propose things and then the whole situation may change because everything's changing every day, it seems like. And then you will just tell us how it changed, and we will talk to you about alignment with goals and approve that change. So you have longer to spend the money than you have to just complete the project and give your final report. So examples of projects, the last round that libraries applied for. Oh my gosh, so many. I mean, some, first of all, I would direct you to, if you can put it in the link, Elena, or in the chat, there's a link. We've actually pulled some exemplary proposals and typical proposals that Elena's putting a link up for of libraries of sample proposals, small academic public school tribal libraries for you to look at and download just from within the guidelines and project design section that are up there that you can look at. These projects range from libraries using this to talk with their trustees and civic officials while buying, extra PPE and paying for staff time because staff time had been cut, to having community conversations about, healthcare information, about e-learning, about what they're going to do in many ways post-pandemic, to One Community, One Book projects that are just sort of a springboard to further engagement. Some have identified folks who are really being left behind, of course, in the digital divide, and have said, okay, we need to talk with those people and we need to figure out how we're going to do it. And then we're going to buy more hotspots as our Band-Aid for this. So we really leave it to you to just talk about your community and what you anticipate them needing. The main thing is that you link what you identify as an issue with what you want to spend the money on. And again, these things can change, but there has to be a link there between what you're hoping to engage the community in discussion on and how you want to spend that money.
Great. So the next question is from Pam. Can we hire an outside person to lead the conversation?
So that is absolutely allowable. You are still required to take the facilitation skills course, but there have absolutely been funded project proposals where the level of conversation facilitation was, in issues facilitation, was something that they felt sort of needed a professional facilitator, someone from outside. Specifically conversations on race, where in our intro to facilitation, that is not something that we are able to delve into, although we encourage you to go to the Office for Literacy Outreach, Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services at ALA for their fantastic resources. But in cases like that, in many other very specific scenarios, absolutely, you may want someone else to lead the conversation. You need to just talk about that in a straightforward manner in your proposal and what you're trying to achieve.
Great. The next question is from Aubrey. Can we wait to take the e-course until after we've been notified if we receive the grant?
You absolutely can. We don't expect you to take the e-course after you've been notified. There may be people on this call, and there are certainly people out there who are part of an ARSL cohort that are attending a workshop that will be taking the e-course now and maybe applying for this. But yes, there's no expectation you take it. That said, if you want to take it, you can. This e-course is open to anyone.
The next question is from Kelly. Can the final report be submitted before December 31st?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, we love early reports, certainly.
And then another question from Jennison. Can we bring guest presenters in to show how to do a particular skill with the librarian facilitating the conversation?
I'm not entirely, that sounds allowable to me. I'm not entirely what you mean by skill, but I don't see why not. That may be something where you'd want to check in with us about what you're thinking, and we'd be happy to make sure that it's help you strategize presenting it in a compelling way.
And they actually provided an example. So the example they were thinking is like how to use Canva.
So that sounds like an educational session, and it may be, and I'm sorry, I'm not really seeing the example, but it sounds like something that may be a skill that the community needs that you may discern based on your community conversation. But the intent is not to combine a educational session or a specific program or substitute that for the community conversation. So it sounds like one where you have some very specific concerns about skills, maybe workforce development skills that need to be supplied in your community, and that's great. But maybe reach out to us so that we can help you position it so that it's compelling and within the guidelines.
Great. The next question we have is from Kay. Do we just have a conversation, or are we also supposed to plan programs on the issue or topic that we select?
You know, it sort of depends, doesn't it? It depends on what your conversation is. I can say the majority of the funded proposals are probably doing conversation or programs related to it, but some of them are, it's informing sort of how, for instance, a conversation of how they will be providing services going forward during sort of what's an extended period of pandemic where libraries are only partially open. So there may not be new programs. You don't have to necessarily do new programs. It's really looking at the issues facing your community and how the library can gather information and possibly help, maybe also pass that on to others. I want to also point out that Elena has put a great link up in the chat. We are available to do individual consultations with you on your ideas and help you create a competitive proposal. We've already heard from more than 60 libraries who have asked for comments and consultation. And all we ask is that you read the FAQ and sort of think about what you're planning before you meet with us so that we can really hone in what's really probably a 30-minute time period on helping you make this competitive.
Great. And speaking of applications, so Linda is wondering if we can speak to the percentage of applicants that will receive the grant.
Right. So I can say in the first round, we received 303 applications and we funded 200 of them. This round, we have 450 grants to distribute. So I think that the percentage of funded proposals will actually be even higher than 2 out of 3. But so I really encourage you to get it in. We have done special outreach to the libraries that applied but did not receive them under the first round, and we are encouraging them to apply again as well. But we really want to get as much out there as possible. So the odds are good.
Hillary is wondering how specific they need to get with the budget narrative regarding staff time.
Not, you just need to give us a total amount of staff of the $3,000 that you're planning to allocate to staff time. We will not be collecting from you in the report specific hours, how you're billing. We will not be asking for receipts. We are giving you this grant, and our experience has shown that libraries are incredibly responsible and accountable. So we are avoiding any burdensome documentation. So we will not be asking for that level. We will be asking you in your report to affirm what you spent the money on, and we will be asking you if the plan for spending the money changes, and it may, that you reach out to us if your plan for spending that money shifts within 10% either way. So if you're planning to spend $1,000 on staff support and you end up needing to spend $2,000, send us an email, tell us why, ask for the variance, tell us how the rest of the expenses are going to go, and we will get back to you with approval.
And the next question is from Sabine, and this is one that I've seen coming in from other people as well. So it's just, could you define conversation? And she's wondering because a lot of people have like individual home visits. Would that be considered a conversation, or would it have to be a bigger group? So I've seen the question for individual home visits from other people too. So could we just define conversation?
Okay. So, this is such a good question. And this is not a question that I've seen before. Have you and Elena, because I'm about to answer it, but I think if you have answered this before, I'm going to go to you with this. Because I have an answer in my head, but it may not be.
I've had a few consultation calls where they wanted to do one-on-one conversations. My answer has typically been that that's not within the scope of this grant. It's not a single one-off conversation with an individual. We're really looking for a broader community conversation, and for that dialogue to be not just between the library and one person, but from between members of the community themselves. So we're saying no at the moment to one-on-one conversations. Sorry.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Samantha, who said that far more concisely than I would probably, to your point, facilitating the conversation is the point is also so that community members are hearing each other and there's a dialogue being promoted. That said, if you're identifying shut-ins, it's not that we are saying you shouldn't do those, but there may be other stakeholders who you may be able to engage in a dialogue. For instance, with a community of shut-ins, perhaps your community partners who are also serving the shut-in community in addition to the library, perhaps that could be a strategy. And then part of the implementation following the community conversation could be a series of one-on-one, a survey, or this type of interaction that is arrived at through this dialogue that you have with other stakeholders in the community to fit the guidelines.
Great. And then Joseph is wondering, can grant funds be used to finance projects or programs that result from the conversations?
Absolutely. Yes. The answer is yes. And so the trick there, this gets into a chicken or egg thing in the proposal though, right? So if you're planning the programs you want to do are a result of the conversation, then how are you going to propose a program that you want to do? So what you want to do is identify the some scope, some honing in on the issues that you want to discuss in this community conversation and acknowledge that you're not sure how this will end up going, but this is, what you're committing to doing in terms of next steps following the community conversation. And we're happy to help you flesh that out as well. I'm going to quick jump to Annette's question about can paper survey be used? You can use any sort of community feedback techniques you want as part of an overall effort, but paper surveys are absolutely not a substitute for facilitating a conversation. But we're not saying you need to do a conversation in place of other community metrics or information gathering you find effective in addition to is absolutely fine.
And I have a question from Jenna that's very specific. So she's a member of Noble New Way, representing the library. And they're wondering if they choose to do a community conversation on a topic which leads to a new library service, would this idea be eligible?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds absolutely eligible. It's a topic based on things you are trying to develop in terms of service. Sure.
But just to piggyback on that, I'm not sure if you're asking if asset-based community development or, Noble New Way can apply for the grant itself,
no.
in which case, no, it has to be the library.
Yes.
And I believe that's all the questions we have at the moment. So we have about 9 minutes left, so we have a few minutes for a few additional questions if you would like to have us answer them. Otherwise, we'll just hang out for a little while.
Yeah, so think about this. One thing we have, we learned, while folks are thinking about additional questions, I can share with you some of the things we learned certainly by, there is a question in the Q&A. One of the things we learned in the first round was that the most effective way to do this in terms of just actually navigating the application might be for you to go to the website to look at the recording of this. You notice the last half of this webinar was sort of walking you through the application, and we've Elena has put it on the website and listed timestamps. You can just skip ahead to that piece of it. So feel free to do that. And again, we cannot encourage you enough to book an individual grant consultation to discuss your ideas. We are here for you with that. We want you to get these grants. Also, our review process is entirely a peer review process. So library workers from small and rural libraries will be reading these proposals. The number one tip I give to folks that I do individual consultation with is write the proposal as if you were explaining it, answering the questions in a way that one of your colleagues could read it and sort of get it and understand where you're going, because that's essentially what will happen with the review. So the question is there a chance, any chance that could be expanded? I'm not sure what Barbara is.
That was a separate thread. Barbara was just requesting additional examples.
Oh, great.
So Nancy is wondering, where do we book to discuss our proposal?
That is the form, the link to the form that Elena just posted, Nancy, above your question and below your question. She's bookended you with the links. So just click through there. Also, for those of you who are ARSL members, I would absolutely encourage you to post on your ARSL chats and electronic discussion lists and forums, asking what some of your fellow ARSL members have done, what their ideas are, because we just listened in on the Small and Rural Libraries Conversation, where ARSL was presenting at the ALA Midwinter meeting over the weekend, and there was so much discussion about this and so many libraries on there who had received this and are really fired up in what they're doing. So please do that. I also want to say one final thing is I'm not seeing, or almost final thing is I'm not seeing another question, and that is that I want you to know that the first round of grants, 113 of those grants were given to libraries serving communities under 5,000 people. So really small communities, what IMLS determines as really small communities, received the majority of those grants. The next round was 44 were given to the mid-tier communities serving 5,000 to 10,000 people, and then 39, so almost the same percentage, were given to libraries serving 10,000 to 25,000 people. So really, truly, this is going out to libraries serving very small communities.
So I don't see any other questions, and we only have about 4 minutes left.
Samantha, Elena, what am I forgetting to say? Drop your wisdom, please.
I just have a quick note. If anyone on the call started a draft in round one, just wanted to let you know you will have to create a new application in the system, but you'll still be able to access your old application from your dashboard. But you will have to actually start a new application under the round 2 grants, so that way it's tied to the correct grant deadline. And if you have any questions about using the system, you can reach out to us at publicprograms@ala.org.
And the only other thing that I would add is that, as has been mentioned throughout this webinar, we are willing to look at draft proposals. However, we need to receive those by February 25th. If you get them to us after that, we're not going to be able to provide you feedback on them just due to the sheer amount that we may be getting or other commitments that we need to shift to.
Oh, thank you all so much. I know what this means to take an hour out of your days, these days especially. We so appreciate the time that you've taken to consider applying for this, and we really hope you will. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck. March 4th, let's do it.